It is 6:40 in the evening. You are standing outside a convenience store with $10 in your hand. $5 could buy a drink. Another 5 could disappear into something you won't remember tomorrow. Instead, you open your phone. You move $10 into an investment account. $10. It looks almost ridiculous. $10 cannot change your life. At least that's what it feels like, because $10 is too small to matter today. It won't pay your rent. It won't replace your paycheck. It won't make you wealthy next month. But there is something strange about small amounts of money. They don't have to change your life today. They only have to survive long enough for time to change them. So imagine you are 25 years old, and from tonight onward, you invest $10 every single day. No prediction, no stock picking, no attempt to get rich quickly. Just $10 every day. You wake up tomorrow and do it again, and the next day, and the next. At first, nothing happens. For the first few weeks, the account barely moves. $300 becomes $400. $400 becomes $500. You check it and feel almost disappointed. You have been doing this for months, and the number still looks small. That is the first psychological trap. Your brain is built to notice immediate rewards. A $10 meal gives you something immediately. A $10 purchase gives you something you can hold. A $10 investment gives you almost nothing you can feel. There is no applause. Nobody notices. Nobody tells you that you made a smart decision. The money simply disappears from your checking account and becomes a tiny piece of something that may matter decades from now. So, you keep going. At the end of your first year, you have put away about $3,650. Assuming a long-term average return around 8%, the account might be slightly above what you personally contributed. Not dramatically above, not enough to change your lifestyle. You still go to work, you still pay rent, you still sit in traffic, you still wonder whether you're doing enough with your life. But something has changed. You have created a machine that didn't exist before, and the machine has one job: take a small amount of today's money and give it time. You're 25. You keep investing. $10 every day. Some days you forget. Then you automate it. That decision turns out to matter more than motivation ever could, because motivation disappears. Automation doesn't. The money leaves your account before you have the chance to negotiate with yourself. You don't ask whether you deserve dinner. You don't ask whether you should buy something. You don't even think about it. $10 leaves, and your life continues. At 27, the account might be approaching $12,000. Now, something interesting happens. The market has contributed thousands of dollars that you never worked for. You didn't work an extra shift for that money. You didn't start another business. You didn't find a secret investment. You simply owned assets and waited. But this is where the story gets uncomfortable, because someone you know discovers an investment that went up 40% in a few months. They made more money in a short period than you have made from months of boring contributions. They show you their phone. The number is green. They tell you this is how people actually get rich. You look at your account. Yours is boring. Theirs is exciting. And suddenly, $10 a day feels stupid. This is the moment when most people abandon the process. Not because the process stopped working, because something more exciting appeared. You have to understand something here. Investing is not only a battle against the market, it is a battle against your own sense of impatience. The market can give you a reasonable return over decades. It cannot give you the emotional satisfaction of becoming rich next Tuesday. And that is why boring often wins. You are 30 now. 5 years have passed. You have personally invested roughly $18,250. With growth, your account could be somewhere around $22,000. Now, this number still isn't life-changing, but compare it to where you started. At 25, $10 looked meaningless. At 30, those $10 have become a financial foundation. And you begin to notice something else. The account doesn't only represent money, it represents options. Your car breaks. You don't panic quite as much. Your employer changes your schedule. You don't immediately start calculating which bill you can delay. You receive an unexpected expense. It hurts, but it doesn't automatically become a crisis. That is one of the first things money buys you. Not luxury, not status, distance. Distance between something going wrong and your entire life falling apart. You are 35. 10 years have passed. You have personally invested roughly $36,500. With, depending on market performance, the account could be around $60,000. Now, the numbers start becoming strange. Your contributions are still important, but the growth is becoming impossible to ignore. The money you invested earlier has had years to work, and every year of growth creates a larger base for the next year's growth. This is compounding, but the word sounds much more impressive than the experience, because compounding does not feel powerful while it is happening. It feels slow. It feels boring. It feels like checking an account and seeing that it went up a few $100s, then another few hundred, then another, until one day you realize the account is no longer growing because of what you put into it. It's growing because of what it already contains. You are 40. 15 years have passed. Your total contributions are roughly $54,750. With an average 8% annual return, the account could be around $100,000. And this is where something changes psychologically. $100,000 is no longer an abstract number. It can generate meaningful growth on its own. At 8%, $100,000 represents roughly $8,000 of potential annual growth. That doesn't mean you should expect exactly $8,000 every year. Markets don't work that neatly. Some years will be terrible. Some years will be extraordinary. Some years will barely move. But the principle is what matters. Your money has become large enough that its movement can compete with your contributions. The machine is finally becoming visible. You are still working, but your investments have started working beside you. You are 45, 20 years. Your personal contributions have reached about $73,000. The account could be around $180,000. And now imagine the market drops sharply. Your balance falls. You open the app and see thousands of dollars disappear from the screen. The old version of you would have panicked, but the old version of you didn't have 20 years of evidence. You have seen markets rise. You have seen markets fall. You have learned that a falling number is not automatically a permanent loss. So you keep investing. In fact, the same $10 is now buying assets at lower prices. It doesn't feel good, but you understand the difference between feeling bad and making a bad decision. That distinction is worth more than any investment tip. You are 50 now. 25 years have passed. Your personal contributions have reached about $91,250, at somewhere around transiting to $290,000. Now think about what happened. You didn't become a different person. You didn't suddenly receive a huge inheritance. You didn't win anything. You simply repeated an almost embarrassingly small decision for 25 years. And that's the part people underestimate. We naturally imagine wealth being created by extraordinary moments, a promotion, a business sale, a lucky investment, a huge inheritance. But a large financial life can also be built from ordinary decisions repeated for an extraordinary amount of time. You are 55, 30 years. Your contributions have reached about $109,500. At an average 8% return, the account could be approaching $500,000. Now, the $10 has become almost invisible because the account is doing something your original $10 contribution could never do. It's creating growth from its own growth. The money you invested in your 20s is now helping generate money in your 50s. That is the strange thing about time. You don't get to feel its power at the beginning. You only get to see the evidence later. And by the time the evidence becomes obvious, most of the work has already happened. You are 60, 35 years. Your total contributions are around $127,750. At an average 8% annual return, the account could be around $700,000. Now, you look at the number differently now. Not because you suddenly became obsessed with money, because you understand what the number represents. It represents thousands of evenings when you could have spent $10 and didn't. Thousands of decisions nobody witnessed. Thousands of tiny transfers that were individually insignificant. Together, they became something enormous. And there's another realization here. You didn't have to stop enjoying your life. You didn't need to live in a basement eating instant noodles for 35 years. The entire strategy was built around an amount small enough to fit inside an ordinary life. $10. That's why it worked. If someone had told you at 25 that you needed to invest $3,650 every year for the next 35 years, the number might have felt intimidating. But $10 tonight, that feels possible. $10 tomorrow, also possible. And the human brain is much better at accepting a small decision today than a gigantic sacrifice for the next 35 years. You are 65.
40 years have passed. You have personally invested about $146,000. At an 8% average annual return, the account could be around $1 million. Not because $10 is magical. Not because 8% is guaranteed, not because every year went perfectly, and not because you found the perfect investment. Because you combined three ordinary forces: a small contribution, a diversified long-term investment, and time. That is the entire mechanism. But now comes the part nobody talks about. Imagine going back to the convenience store. Same evening, same $10, same decision. You could spend it. And there is nothing morally wrong with spending it. Maybe you buy the drink. Maybe you buy dinner. Maybe you buy something you genuinely enjoy. The problem isn't the $10. The problem is what happens when every small amount is automatically assigned to the present. Because money spent today ends its financial journey today. Money invested today begins a journey that can last decades. And the difference between those two choices becomes enormous only after enough time passes. At 25, the difference might be invisible. At 30, noticeable. At 40, significant. At 50, undeniable. At 65, it can become the difference between having a financial cushion and having genuine options. But there's an even deeper lesson here. The real transformation isn't the $1 million. It's the person you become while building it. At 25, you're trying to convince yourself that $10 matters. At 30, you're learning patience. At 35, you're learning not to chase every exciting opportunity. At 40, you're learning that volatility doesn't automatically mean danger. At 50, you're learning that your money can work without you. At 60, you're learning that time was always the most valuable asset you owned. And at 65, you finally understand what the $10 was really buying. Not $1 million. Time, options, distance from emergencies, freedom to say no, freedom to leave a bad job, freedom to help someone without destroying yourself financially, freedom to make decisions without every decision beginning with, can I afford it? That is what the money became. But here's the uncomfortable part. You don't know which $10 decision will matter. You won't know when the market will rise. You won't know when it will fall. You won't know which year will produce the strongest returns. You won't know whether the next decade will be easy or brutal. You don't need to know, because the strategy was never based on predicting tomorrow. It was based on refusing to underestimate 40 years. That's the mistake most people make. They judge a financial decision by what it does today. $10 today buys something. $10 invested today looks almost useless. But $10 given 40 years is not really $10 anymore. It becomes a tiny worker, then another, thousands of them, all moving in the same direction. And eventually, the workers begin hiring other workers. That is compounding. You don't notice it when it starts. You notice it when it becomes difficult to stop. So imagine that same convenience store again. It's 6:40 in the evening. You're 25. The $10 bill is already in your hand. The drink is sitting on the counter. Your phone is in your pocket. Nobody around you knows what you're about to do. Nobody will congratulate you. Nobody will care. And that's exactly why the decision is so powerful. Because there is no audience. You're not choosing between being good with money and being bad with money. You're choosing between two versions of yourself that will take decades to fully reveal themselves. One version spends the $10 and forgets it. The other invests it and forgets it.
Both feel almost identical tonight. The difference appears years later. And that's the strange thing about wealth. The decisions that create it rarely feel important when you make them. They feel important only after time has finished explaining them. So if you're 25, don't worry about becoming a millionaire tomorrow. You don't need to. You need to become the person who can make a small financial decision consistently enough that time eventually has something to work with. $10 isn't going to save you tonight, but $10 repeated for 40 years might completely change the person standing in that convenience store someday. The future version of you won't remember every $10 decision, but he may live inside the consequences of all of them. And that is the real power of small money. Not what it can buy today, what it can become when you stop asking it to disappear.